He was one of the most feared men in the Philadelphia crime family. Cousin of the Godfather of the city of Philadelphia. He was a hitter, mobster, and a future rising star in his own right. This is the story of Johnny Keys Simone. The beginning. Johnny Keys was born on February 25, 1911 in South Philadelphia. He is infamously known for being the cousin of the Godfather of Philadelphia, Angelo Bruno, and being a mobster in his own right. Despite being a year younger than Angelo Bruno, several reports indicate that it was Johnny Keys Simone to introduce Angelo Bruno to the criminal underworld. Bruno owned his own grocery store in the Passyunck Square in South Philadelphia. Meanwhile, Simone would start his career as a bootlegger during the Great Depression in his youthful years. He would be arrested for several times for assault and robbery after the Great Depression years. There have been allegations that Johnny Keys would work for a vending company, and upon his introduction into the Philadelphia crime family, he would start as a hitter. According to former Gambino underboss Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano, Johnny Keys Simone taken over 50 murders in his lifetime and labeled him a hitman's hitman. During the 1950s, Simone and Bruno will be rising stars in the Philadelphia criminal underworld. Bruno met the reigning godfather Salvatore Sabella and will work in the criminal rackets under Sabella's protection. Simone ran a profitable bookmaking operation. In the year of 1950, Angelo Bruno sent Johnny Keys Simone to Trenton, New Jersey to work with Charles Pinky Costello, who was a Philly wise guy and was considered the boss of the Trenton number and gambling. Also, Costello is Angelo Bruno's cousin. He was specifically his first cousin. Simone would make Philadelphia's crime family robust through the number operation in Trenton. In 1959, Angelo Bruno will become Godfather of Philadelphia, and he promoted Johnny Keys Simone to be leader and have taken full control over Trenton's numbers racket. The 1950s was the decade for Simone and Bruno to make their names in the criminal underworld. The following decades were a testament to how long they were going to maintain them. In the 1960s, Johnny Keys Simone became the captain in Trenton-based operations. He would make the criminal syndicate very wealthy and grew a large fortune running in Trenton's numbers of operations. His numbers record was very robust that he was reported to be a multi-millionaire as one of the most affluent figures in the Philadelphia crime family. During this year in New Jersey, he would build a working relationship with another New Jersey-based Philly mobster. He was Antonio Tony Bananas Capernegro. Tony Bananas also controlled the family's gambling and bookmaking and loan sharking rackets in Newark, New Jersey. Capernegro will be the future consigliere of Angelo Bruno after Justo Rognetta died in 1977. Angelo Bruno himself would appoint Tony Bananas to be the consular of the crime family. This decision will be a fatal mistake. During this time, Angelo Bruno and Johnny Keys Simone's relationship dwindled, and the seeds of treachery were planted within the family. The plan. Antonio Tony Bananas Capernegro, Johnny Keys Simone, and many others in the Philadelphia crime family were becoming frustrated with the power of Angelo Bruno. When gambling became legalized, Bruno did not take advantage of the commercialism exclusively when he was still loyal to the Gambino crime family, despite the passing after his friend Carlo Gambino passed away. On October 15, 1976, Carlo Gambino died of a heart attack. With Gambino gone, Bruno lost his most important ally in the underworld. Carlo Gambino, the boss of bosses, was so powerful that Angelo Bruno was untouchable. However, in the wake of Carlo Gambino's death, Bruno was exposed. Most of Bruno's subordinates felt that they were missing out on money because of Bruno's old-fashioned and content ways. Unbeknownst to Bruno, members of his own crime family were plotting against him due to these reasons. One of them was casino, gambling, we mentioned. Also, Angelo Bruno would not allow his own crime family members to get involved in the robust narcotics market. However, members of the Gambino crime family were into the drug trade and exchanged Bruno money that many people felt was drug money, and he would be a hypocrite towards his own community. Therefore, Johnny Keys Simone will collaborate with Capernigo to overthrow Angelo Bruno. In 1980, the 1970s were over, and the decade were unleashed a whole new rampage of violence and create a civil war within the crime family of Philadelphia, started with Angelo Bruno. Capernigo had been lining up to support in Philadelphia for a palace coup. He enlisted Frank Sedone, the Barracuda, Johnny Keys Simone, and Alfred Salerno, Capernigo's brother-in-law, as willing participants in the conspiracy. Sedone, a longtime Bruno family soldier and one of the biggest loan sharks in Philadelphia, was to be the underboss of Capernigo's rebel regime. Behind Bruno's back and wishes, Capernigo decided to take business, and within another crime family was the Genovese. He approached the Genovese family boss Frank Thierry in order to seek the commission's permission to whack Angelo Bruno to take over the crime family. Thierry, sensing an opportunity to take over Capernigo's New Jersey gambling operation, set up an operation in Atlantic City. He lied to Capernigo and told him that he had the commission's support. Coup de grace. March 21st, 1980, Johnny Keys Simone and Frank the Barracuda Sedone met with John Stanfa, also known as Giovanni John Stanfa, in New York City. During this time, John Stanfa was a young Sicilian wise guy who Simone and Sedone recruited to replace regular driver Raymond Long John Mortorano and Mario Sonny Riccobini. The plan of a coup d'etat was set in motion. Angelo Bruno would have his last meal at Cuz's Little Italy with some of his friends. Many underworld observers believe Frank Sedone marked Angelo Bruno by giving him the symbolic kiss of death after he kissed Bruno's cheek before Bruno left the restaurant. Angelo Bruno and John Stanfa left the restaurant and prepared for Bruno's last ride. It was a dark, rainy night as John Stanfa was driving Angelo Bruno to his home at 934 Snyder Avenue in South Philadelphia. Before he was driven home, he and John Stanfa stopped at Broad and Snyder to get a newspaper, and Bruno would never expect anything unusual. The temperature was dropping and rain grew denser around 9:30 p.m. John Stanfa parks the car in the cold in front of Angelo Bruno's house as it grew colder. Two men behind the car would step out of the shadows. Angelo Bruno's window was lowered as he flicked his cigarette, and it would be the last thing he would ever do. A shooter loaded double-barrel shotgun and blasted Bruno in the back of his head by pulling both triggers simultaneously. The shooting would instantly take the life of the Godfather of Philadelphia. John Stanfa would be wounded from the pellets from the gunshot blast. The shooter and his accomplice fled the crime scene. John Stanfa will also do the same, leaving Angelo Bruno's corpse alone in the car. His mouth would gape wide open extremely as if he was screaming for help. The gruesome image of him became an iconic mob hit, especially since he was the Godfather of Philadelphia. The rain would stop and the neighborhood would wake from the gunshot blast noise, creating a pandemonium in South Philadelphia. Therefore, this night became a media circus, as you can see here.
Yeah, I can see it.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah, we've covered it.
There you go. Come on, let's move. Moving. Come on. Right on. Go ahead.
We got it.
Come on, Bobby, come on.
Hey, Charlie.
Excuse me, sir. Then we go to Cusses, man. Hey, let's go. That's a good fight. What? Yeah.
This case of mine was the husband, and we're told the police made a circus of this. I think it's a shame. 2 hours.
That's got the clear fight. put you under. Where's Bruno's candy store, Crouch?
I have no idea.
One of these places was his, right?
I think.
The hit on Angelo Bruno would be a success, especially to those who are involved in the conspiracy. That includes Johnny Keys Simone, Frank the Barracuda Sindone, Antonio Tony Bananas Capernegro, Alfredo Salerno, and possibly more. According to former Philadelphia crime underboss Philip Crazy Phil Leonetti, he wrote a book called Mafia Prince, and he specifically labeled Antonio Tony Bananas Capernegro to be the shooter behind Angelo Bruno's demise. Also, his co-author Scott Bernstein also believed Antonio Bananas was the shooter. And from our own exclusive archives, George Anastasia was not surprised to see will be the man to pull the trigger against his own boss, Angelo Bruno. Gotcha. And then I keep hearing, because I don't hear disputes about Antonio Bananas Capernegro being his executioner, because I think Philip Leonetti said that in Mafia Prince, the fall of La Cosa Nostra. But I'm just curious, like, has there ever been like case closes for some of these members, or is always?
I mean, what happened was, I think Capernegro, in fact, he might have even been the shooter that night. Or some people say he was the actual gunman with the shotgun. What happened in the aftermath of the Bruno murder was those guys turned up dead. Capernegro turned up dead. Salerno turned up dead. Frankie Sindone turned up dead. So, you know, the Mafia Commission was carrying out street level justice. You know, killing a boss was a major offense, and there always was a price to pay. And it wasn't, if you think about it, what it was the hierarchy of organized crime looking out for one another and watching their back. You know, you don't want to have a boss killed and the guys that do will walk away, because you may be the next boss that's killed. So there had to be retribution, and that certainly happened quickly in the Bruno assassination. Those guys all turned up dead, with the exception of John Stamper, who went on the run and later surfaced as
the demise of Angelo Bruno was a success for Capernegro, Salerno, Sindone, and Simone. However, the outcome would not go in their favor. The downfall. March 22nd, 1980. The next day, Simone was reported to visit John Stamper in the hospital. The hospital staff did not report to what words the men exchanged, since it was in Italian. However, many historians and criminal world observers assumed that Simone warned Stamper to stay out of sight in case of any relations of the demise of Bruno. A week later, Capernegro sent Simone and Sindone to meet with the commission on his behalf. During the meeting, the commission wanted Capernegro to meet with them in person. Capernegro would assume that he would be crowned to be the new boss of the Philadelphia crime family, and that his supporters were not of any danger. He was wrong. He thought he received permission from the Genovese front boss, Frank Funzi Thierry. However, Thierry was not the boss, as Capernegro and the media believed it was. Vincent the Chin Gigante was the real boss. This maneuver was used to confuse law enforcement and any other mafia conspirators. Capernegro and his brother-in-law, Alfred Salerno, would agree to the meeting and would arrive to New York for the meeting. Capernegro was summoned to the basement of a triangular social club in Greenwich Village, Manhattan. In the meeting, there was a panel in a darkly lit room. There was Frank Funzi Thierry, Anthony Fat Tony Salerno, Luis Bobby Manna, and Vincent the Chin Gigante inside an empty club. Double-crossed. As Capernegro believed he was going to be crowned the new boss, he looked at Frank Funzi Thierry and he met with Vincent the Chin Gigante. Vincent the Chin Gigante had told Capernegro, "We're here to ask who gave you permission to whack out your boss, Angelo Bruno." Capernegro stumbled and was confused. He looked at Frank Funzi Thierry, and Thierry had looked at Capernegro very stone-faced. Capernegro had told the Chin, Funzi told me the permission. Visitor Shinjiganti's face looked puzzled. He asked Frank, what is he talking about? Frank Funzi Thierry had stated, I told you to straighten out, not to kill him. And this is when Capernegro was shocked and knew that this was not looking good for him. He realized that he'd been double-crossed, just like he double-crossed Angelo Bruno, and now he knew his fate was in stake. Therefore, unbeknownst to Capernegro, in the darkly lit room, there were Genovese soldiers ready to take out Capernegro himself, as he knew he pleaded for his life, and unfortunately, this would be the last day Capernegro would see the light of day. Capernegro was brutally stabbed, shot, and money will be stuffed in all orifices after the brutal demise of Antonio Bananas Capernegro. Along with him, Genovese soldier would locate his brother Alfred Salerno either in a car or a restaurant. Several different reports have either stated that both will be beaten and share the same brutal fate as well. Somewhere in the Bronx, Antonio Bananas Capernegro will be found in the trunk of a car, and then when police discover his body brutally beaten, and money stuffed in all orifices, they knew this would be a sign of greed from the mafia message. As the media circulated the news of the brutal demise of Capernegro and Salerno, Simone, Stanfa, and Sedone had feared that they would be next in line of losing their lives, as all men tried to remain low-key as possible. The commission, the bosses of the five families, had officially made Philly underboss Philip the Chicken Man Testa the new boss of the Philadelphia crime family. Testa was ordered by the commission to eliminate all the members who were involved in the Angelo Bruno mob hit. Johnny Keys Simone wanted to overthrow Testa in order to take over the family himself. He would reach out to two powerful men, James T. Licavole and John Pinas Tronolole. James T. Licavole was the boss of the Cleveland crime family, and John Pinas Tronolole was a mobster who will be the head of the Cleveland crime family in the 1980s. Simone will request their support to help him overthrow Philip Testa. However, both men would double-cross Simone. Licavole will report to the commission about Simone's ideas to take over the family without their sanction. Therefore, Johnny Keys Simone was marked for death. The commission was upset with Bruno's unsanctioned murder, issued a death edict for Philadelphia gangster Johnny Keys Simone. Simone was aware that he was in trouble. Simone traveled to Florida to ask John Tronolone to intercede for him with Anthony Fat Tony Salerno. Tronolone called Salerno, who told him that Simone's fate was sealed. At Salerno's request, Tronolone assured Simone that everything was now okay and that he should return to New York and talk to Salerno. This confirmation reassured Simone to return to New York, where Simone would realize that he had been double-crossed. The kidnapping. Simone now realized that John Tronolone told him everything is okay. James Lacovi said he would support him to take over the Philadelphia crime family. Simone would continue his operations. He would still work with Gambino crime family Nicholas Nicky Russo. Russo was a longtime soldier representing the Gambino crime family and was a childhood friend of Simone. When word got around to the commission that Russo was meeting with Simone, underworld observers would consider the possibility of the Gambinos working with Simone to reassure his plan. Therefore, the Gambinos had to dismiss the rumor that they were supporting Simone. September 19, 1980 would be the last days for Johnny Keys Simone's life. Sammy the Bull and his members kidnapped Johnny Keys Simone from the country club in Trenton, New Jersey. They forced him into a parked van which promptly drove away. As the van approached a toll booth, Gravano and his entourage feared that Simone would yell or make a scene to get someone's attention to liberate himself from this hostility. On the contrary, Simone chose to remain silent. Ironically, due to all the stress and bad health living the mafia lifestyle, he was suffering from a seizure. He asked Sammy the Bull Gravano to get a nitroglycerin pill from his pocket and put it in his mouth. "Don't let me die from a heart attack," Simone pleaded to Gravano. The van pulled over near a payphone booth. Gravano told Keys that the boss of the crime family were discussing what was going to happen to him. Simone stated that if they decided to whack him, could Gravano take his shoes off. The request seemed unusual, but for Simone it was not. The request was twofold. He wanted to send a message to his wife and criminal underworld that he did not die unexpectedly. Simone had an agreement with his wife that if he died from the street life, his shoes would be off his feet to know at his last moments he thought about her. The bosses informed everyone on the phone that it was time for Simone to be executed. The crime family drove him to an excluded area in the woods in New York. Before his last moments, Simone had two requests. First, his shoes to be removed, and he wants a made man to do it. These two wishes were granted. Gravano removed his shoes. As the van stopped, he was escorted out of the vehicle. As Simone lowered his head to prepare his face, Louis Melito, a made man, shot Simone 3 times in the back of his head in the middle of the woods. This was the end of Johnny Keys Simone. The aftermath. Simone's death would send shockwaves into the criminal underworld and NewsMe reports. Here are the news footages.
6 days after Bruno's murder, there was a meeting in North Jersey involving John Stanfa, Albert Salerno, John Sindone, John Simone, Phil Testa, and Antonio Camponegro. 6 weeks later, Camponegro and his brother-in-law, Albert Salerno, were found in Brooklyn in the trunk of a car. On September 20th, John Simone was found shot to death in a vacant field on Staten Island. His car was found in Yardley, Bucks County. On October 30th, the body of John Sindone, Angelo Bruno's loan sharking chief, was found in a plastic bag behind a shopping center at 20th and Oregon in South Philadelphia. On February 20th of this year, the grand jury indictments were handed up against Phil Chicken Man Testa and 9 other alleged mob members. They were charged with racketeering, loan sharking, mail fraud, and illegal gambling. U.S. Attorney Peter Vira said at the time the indictments would seriously hurt mob activity in Philadelphia. But 10 days ago, law enforcement sources told Action News that other mob families had decided that the indicted men were expendable, and there was a chance they would exchange information if the feds would go easy on them. Therefore, the execution of Testa may have been ordered simply as a practical matter. This is Joe Sanchez, Channel 6 Action News. Days after Bruno's death, several second-level lieutenants gathered to try to divide up the turf left behind. But it wasn't too long after that when more mob-style hits began taking their toll on the feuding factions. Antonio Camponegro and Albert Salerno were both found dead. Their bodies had been stabbed, shot, and mutilated. Another reputed mobster, John Simone, was shot dead. His car was found in Yardley, Bucks County. A month after that, the body of Frank Sindone, allegedly Bruno's loan sharking chief, was found in South Philadelphia. It was less than a month ago that law enforcement officials got in on the act with a sweeping indictment against Testa and 9 of the remaining alleged mobsters.
It could be, but the victim this time was not well known, which seems to make him an unlikely target of either a mob feud or a power play. It has to be stressed that any speculation that this was a mob killing is just speculation. All the police know for sure at this point is that 32-year-old Pietro Incerelli, father of 2, is dead following an execution-style slaying. John Rollins, Channel 6 Action News in Mount Laurel.
Tornelone was also charged with conspiring to whack John Simone as a result of Leonardo's testimony regarding Trolone's role in the 1980. On May 4 of 1988, he was acquitted of all charges in the Federal District Court in Manhattan, as you can see from the news archives. Frank Sindone, Antonio Bananas Camponegro, Alfred Salerno, and all conspirators lost their lives in violence. The only person who managed to avoid it was John Stanfa. However, John Stanfa is now in jail and was convicted of multiple charges in 1995. John Stanfa was sentenced to life in prison. Sammy the Bull Gravano is now a businessman and podcaster. He has spoke his moments with Johnny Keys Simone. After all these years, Simone's hit is the one Sammy Gravano regrets the most, since he felt he took the true meaning and embodiment of La Cosa Nostra. Here's from his own words.
So you get this contract to kill Johnny Keys. So you actually get to know him first, right?
I don't really get to know him. I have a couple of meetings with him, and I'm not friends with him or anything like that. But I get to meet him a couple of times. The only reason I'm meeting with him is I'm going to kill him.
Right.
And I'm trying to know what he is. He's not like in the street where you could just kill somebody. He's in a war. He's got 20, 30 guys around him. They're at war. They're not looking to fight. They're looking to kill. So I just want to meet him to know who I'm hunting.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be, when we meet, two samurais. I'm young and up and coming. I'm a hit guy. He's much older. I'm told he's got 50 hits under his belt. He's smart. He's cunning. He's dangerous. And if he smells something wrong, he will fucking kill you in a split second. But first, they'll torture the shit out of you to find out what you really know. I was advised not to go to the meeting. I said, I need to know who I'm fighting. I need to look at him in the eyes. I need to be with him. I was, how the fuck am I going to kill him? He's got 30, 40 guys. I don't even know what the fuck he's about. And I had meetings with him. So when you're saying I didn't make friends with him, but I had meetings with him twice. The third meeting we had, he died.
Right. I guess you had two guys with you, Melito and D'Angelo?
Yeah, I had more than that. But
okay.
I had a few others.
A few guys.
Yeah.
And you guys were at the Yardley Golf Club in Pennsylvania?
If that's the name. I don't remember the name.
Right. So you essentially kidnapped him?
Basically, yeah. Snatched him.
Snatched him up. You took him out to this wooded area in Staten Island. And before he was killed, he actually had some requests.
Yeah.
And what were they?
If I wasn't the guy to pull the trigger, he wanted a made man to kill him. And I'll give you something that maybe is not expecting. He knew he was a samurai. And he knew he lost the battle. And he was going to die with honor. That's what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing he wanted a few things. So he wanted a made guy to be able to shoot him. He wanted to die Cosa Nostra style. He wanted me to take off his shoes. And I asked him why. And he said, my wife isn't stupid. She knows I'm in the mafia. She knows there's a war going on. I would tell her, calm down. I'm going to die without my shoes on. So don't worry about this, meaning that he's in the street, he gets killed, his shoes are still on. So he's trying to calm her down and tell her that. And now, what he's doing is sending his wife a message, hours, minutes before he's going to die, that if his shoes ain't on, she'll know that I was thinking of her in my last minutes. It blew my mind. This wasn't a regular story no more. This wasn't that story. It's not a gangster fucking movie. This was a fucking love story here.
Mm.
I had so much respect for him that it's insane. He showed me a few things in the time period that we were together. He showed me the real side of Cosa Nostra. He showed me how to die like a man. I've questioned myself my whole life after that. Could I die like that? Like he died? Blew me away. I'm going to say another thing that's going to maybe blow some people away. In that 12 hours I was with him, I fell in love with him. The respect I had for him was off the charts. I wasn't happy about killing him. I felt dirty. I felt I killed the epitome of our life, which you're supposed to be. He was that.
Yeah.
So let's get further into it before I start getting a little fucking, little disturbed. Every time I tell this story and think about him and see his face, it bothers me.
This concludes our story on Johnny Keys Simone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and check out more of our content. Feel free to give your feedback and suggestions on what we should do next in the comments. This is Infinite Lee Productions. We love ya.